Why?
We have a lot of different information inside. And for me, it's the more accurate.
The most accurate.
Most accurate, sorry.
Most accurate, yeah, absolutely.
Yes, right.
There is they have a lot of examples there, especially when they talk about sometimes it can be unclear the way culture is, the way we see it, because we have our own assumptions, like our own ideas, our own opinions, before we actually know the fact. Before you know the facts, you usually have an assumption. If you don't know if it's a fact, then everything you say or you write about is usually going to be an assumption. It's just your opinion. So it could be that, right? It could be pretty fuzzy in the values, orientations to life, beliefs, policies, right? So policies, maybe political policy. The way every country has a political way that they run their country, right? So that can create also a culture, a political culture. So depending on the policy. So for example, we have communism, we have quote unquote democracy here in the United States. Well, we have a democracy. There's dictatorships, right? Like in Venezuela, we have Maduro, who's a dictator. He has a regime, and basically a dictator is supported by the military, right? So there's different policies around the world, and the way that they. So in Cuba, right, there's again like a communism. So it's a set of values, right? It's a set of values and beliefs and policies and procedures that make people behave a certain way, and dress a certain way, and think a certain way, right? And see the world a certain way. So that could be true, right? I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong, but do not determine each member's behavior. Now, so the only thing is, but do not determine, in number 2, Max, but do not determine each member's behavior. Well, that is true. Because if you don't have that little dependent clause there, but do not determine, believe it or not, then what do we turn into? We turn into robots. Everybody's the same, right? And culture, you need the diversity. Is what I learned, I passed it down to somebody else, and then hopefully they do something better with what I passed down to them, language-wise and everything. But that's a good one, because if we would all be machines. Everybody is the same, a carbon copy of everybody else. So that's why that's a good one there, do not determine fuzziness. So I think I also agree with number 2, right? Culture is fuzzy. And like we all mentioned, right? It's orientations to lives and beliefs, policy, procedures, and behavioral conventions that are shared by a group of people and that influence, right? They influence the people that live there, but they do not determine each member's behavior and the way that they find meaning, right? So, because it's always changing. There's always, every generation is going to bring something different to the current period or the current era, right? Depending. So I'm from the 80s, right? So the 80s, the way that you define too is like if you graduated in high school during that decade, that's your generation basically. Right? So whenever you graduated, whenever you had like high school, that's a determination that makes you then part of that era, that time period. And I know. So now when I see people, and I'll go to an 80s party. And it's like all the old days. Oh, yeah, when you take that, the younger generation, and they fuse it, they blend it, and they make it something new and different. That's what keeps culture alive. The fact that it's always changing, and it's always not 100% clear who's what and where's where in the center. Well, I'm from here. Oh, so if you're from there, that means you're like this. No, I'm not like that. I'm more like this. Oh, totally different. So yes, number 2 is very, very definitive, right? And it's more clear, right? The number 1 is more just like describing it, but this one seems to, number 2, really define more deeply the word culture, right? More deeply, it's more comprehensive. It's more. You can write a book on just number 2. You see what I mean? That's powerful. That means it's saying a lot of information. The other ones are just sort of like describing or giving you a difference between 2 different things, essentially. So yes, very good. And so if you have no questions about that, remember this is the reading part even though we're in writing. Number 2 says, imagine you're explaining your culture to someone from a completely different one. Oh wow. Make a list of the most significant or interesting features. Use the points below to help you. Compare with a partner, right? So we're comparing with a partner. We are each other's partners here in the Zoom world and in the hybrid world. So you notice that the first thing that they mention is food, right? Because food is international.
Is their daily life?
Daily life? Yeah, we can't live without food. So every culture has something that they do with their food that makes them, that's what they use in their culture. So food is very defining.